Call to order the City of Cannon Falls City Council meeting for Tuesday, January 21st. Call to order, or roll call, please.
And Diane Johnson.
Here.
Zimmerman.
Here.
Chad Johnson.
Here.
Jepson.
Here.
Novak.
Here.
Cronenberger.
Here.
Montgomery absent.
We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All right, a motion by Diane, a second by Novak. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Moves us to public input. Public input is intended to afford the public an opportunity to address concerns to the City Council. The public input will be no longer than 30 minutes in total length, and each speaker will have no more than 3 minutes to speak. Speakers may address topics relevant to the governance of the city. Speakers must sign up in advance and must provide their name, address, and topic they intend to address. Comments must be on topic, respectful, pertinent to city business, and adhere to the applicable data privacy rules. Any speaker that violates these rules will be asked to sit down, and if the speaker refuses to comply, they may be removed from the meeting. Speakers shall not address topics that are on the subject of a public hearing. All such comments shall be made during the public hearing. City Council will not generally act on issues raised during public input, but may choose to schedule consideration of the item on a future agenda. Denise Filler?
Here, what do? Do I just come up and babble?
Yep.
Okay, well, this is a first, so
All
bear
right.
with me. Oh, sure, the cop comes to arrest me already.
Well, then, gotta make sure the microphone is on.
Okay. I'm hoping to keep this to 5 minutes, but I said 5, but I'll try to do it in 3. First, instead of wasting more tax money in court, I would like to suggest a compromise. Number 1, race cars can get mufflers to their systems to quiet down the noise. Number 2, limit the times in which they drive. And the residents have the right to file an abatement on their lowering their tax property due to their enjoyment to quiet privacy is compromised. The other thing they have the right to file for is for soundproofing windows and doors around that area. The other thing I want to talk about is the need to control the fair people. Why or what have they done so bad that you want control of this? I don't understand that. I came here 10 years ago. After lots of research, out of 11 county areas, this had the most to offer affordable homes, a nice layout of the city, and the most polite, well-mannered teenagers that I have ever come in contact with. In the 25 years I was a licensed realtor. Now, yeah, your realtors at that time did not work weekends, and now you have 5 to 6 companies that work in Cannon Falls. Affordable housing, there's not too much there, so I was going to suggest, I surveyed your land, and you have room for 150 tiny homes. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're affordable, and they go for $60,000 to $125,000, and I'm thinking that for single people or elderly people, this would be a really good resolution in helping not only build the community, but help the community, because for a single person or 2 young people, that would be like a nice step for them to get up to a $400,000 house. And then I had one question left. What does the city plan on doing for food in this area? I mean, I'm thinking like in 30 years, 50 years, if there's no gas and there's electric cars have been buried, we need an area that somebody would be facilitating food for this area. That was my concern. That's it. Quick and simple.
Thank you. Okay, that moves us to the consent agenda. Consent agenda items may be adopted under one motion as presented or may be removed for discussion and resolution as council business. A, just and correct claims accounting period ending January 16th. B, meeting minutes for January 7, 2025 City Council meeting. C, approve 2025 Fire Department officers. D, approve safety training program with Safe Assure. E, Resolution 2799, accepting a monetary donation of $780 from Matt Amantorp to the Parks Department. F, approve sewer credit for M. Davidson. G, approve sewer credit for R. Knowlton. H, Resolution 2800, approving a conditional use permit for outdoor sales lot at the Cannon Falls Mall. And item I, appoint Melissa Siebert to the library board. Is there anything that anybody would like to pull down? Yes, ma'am.
H, conditional use permit for outdoor sales.
Okay, so H will become 7, or business C. Okay, anything else? Okay, with that, I'll take a motion to approve the consent agenda minus item H.
So moved.
Motion by Jepson, second by Chad. All in favor?
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. Moving to council business, item A, responsible governmental unit agreement between the city of Cannon Falls and Randolph Township relating to environmental review.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry. So we do have representatives from, I believe, Kimley Horn, who's representing Tract as part of this discussion here tonight to be able to answer any questions about what this process is. So right now, the major development that's working is what's called an Alternative Urban Area-Wide Review, AUAR. And because the area right now is located within the township, but there's the intent that an expectation that they will petition and be annexed into the city limits, we have to approve a responsible governmental unit agreement so that the final authority will rest within the city of Cannon Falls for approving or accepting the AUAR agreement when it's completed. So right now, this has been reviewed by our attorney, the township's attorney, and the engineers from those teams. They find it acceptable. There was some changes that came out from what went out in the packet on Friday and what we gave you guys tonight, and those will be amended for the packet. That most of the changes just occurred in the schedule at the end. The rest of the terms were pretty much acceptable. So is there any other questions regarding that, or Ashley is here to speak if anybody wants to know more about the process, what it has.
Has the land been, this is to sell the land to the company that then the company will build, or are we selling the land to someone who then will sell the land to someone else to build?
No, the land currently was private, so there's a purchase agreement on that land by the company to buy that and then develop it. So in the process of what they're trying to develop, there's state statutes that require them to conduct this AUAR assessment over the property for that use. So that's what we're approving tonight, is that the city will become the responsible government unit to approve that review process.
Okay.
Another question?
If I misspeak, Ashley, please, by all means, step up and.
And this study, I'm assuming, costs money?
It does. So back in
The
this,
purchaser would be responsible for funding it then?
yes, and then there are consultant costs like attorneys and engineers that are in this review. So back in December, there was an escrow agreement that the city approved with Tract that we are utilizing to fund and pay for the costs of those expenses related to this
Thank you.
process.
And so when we get the final report, will it just be you and the city engineer and the township folks that review it, or?
No, there's a couple, there's a process for a comment period in which written comments can be submitted over a 30-day window. There will be a public hearing portion of that. So it is, there's definitely a parts of the process that are much more open to input from the community, as well as other state agencies, as well as other interested parties that want to make comment on what's being evaluated. So they're looking at kind of everything and how it could impact based on the what the property is going to be used for. So what type of environmental factors it's going to have, what the water and wastewater consumption might be, different things like that.
Thank you.
I can just add. Hi, I'm Ashley Payne from Kimley Horn. So just a little bit more on that. There are
Track.
no, I'm from a consulting firm that is working on behalf of TRAC to prepare the environmental review, so the AUAR. So a little bit more, John, you had the details correct, but there are 2 public comment periods that are part of this process. So given the size of the project that they're proposing, it requires the environmental review, so that's AUAR. So it'll go out for a public comment 2 times. The first one is for the scoping document, so essentially is laying out what will be studied in the environmental review, and then also for the city to officially order the environmental review to be complete. So it's really just setting up the stage of the area to be studied, the scenarios that will be studied, so the projects or the potential uses that will go on the property, and then also, what will actually be covered as part of that environmental review. That goes out for a 30-day public comment period, and as John mentioned, that goes out to the state agencies, the counties, and then also the public has an opportunity to comment on that. And then once that comment period is complete, the final order will come back to the city council for adoption to officially order the preparation of the AUAR document. That AUAR document will go through the process, will go through another 30-day public comment period, send out to the same agencies, and then once that process is complete, it'll come back to the city council for final adoption. So that final adoption is adopting the environmental review and then also the mitigation plan that's required as part of that environmental review document, which essentially is saying, if the project moves forward, this is everything that would need to be completed in order to mitigate any environmental impacts. So you'll see this come back a couple of times. What's in front of you tonight is just to approve the city of Cannon Falls to be the responsible government unit, or the RGU, for the environmental review document.
And I will add additionally that the township has it on their agenda.
Correct.
I
Yep.
believe tonight or.
Yep. Tonight,
Yep.
It's going in front of the township to approve the RGU agreement as well.
I got a quick question. So if those mitigation factors aren't really implemented, say that, who's at fault? Like, is the city responsible for it then, or is it the contractor or the owner of the property?
So it would be in there, it would document who is responsible for that mitigation, and then like a development agreement or something would also lay out what is required.
Okay.
For mitigation. There could be some items that through development agreement, maybe the city is doing versus the developer is paying for, or it could be, there's something else that would be required.
Okay. I guess what I'm getting at is if the developer slips up, is the city at fault then? Are we on the hook for something, or is it the
No, it's
developer?
whoever is developing the
Okay.
property.
Right.
It's similar to, the AUAR is similar to an environmental assessment worksheet, an EIS as well. It's just an alternate urban area-wide review. So essentially it's an EIS level review, but we're looking at multiple scenarios. So looking at 2 different projects that could potentially go on that property.
Okay.
Or properties, I guess there's a few, there's like 5 parcels.
Yeah, there are multiple parcels on
Yep.
there. But
Yep, and there is about a 40-acre portion of one parcel that is currently within the city of Cannon Falls. The rest of it is within the township.
And I will say, additionally, you touched on the development agreement. That will be a really important element that will come kind of after the environmental process. And that will very much spell out, who's responsible for what. Because there will be components of the project that the city would be involved in, because we will need to bring infrastructure to serve the site. So there'll be portions of that the city is responsible for. There, we can recoup some of that, recoup probably as much of that cost as we can, because we're bringing that specifically for this project. But we want to make sure that, what is happening on that site, what the expectations are, the timelines for everything, that those are met through those development agreements. So that'll be the teeth at the end to make sure, hey, if this isn't met, these are the outcomes that, could happen.
Okay, perfect.
If the environmental report would indicate a greater usage of water resources than we feel our area is able to provide, what happens then?
So there would need to be alternate mitigation measures identified. So if the project were needing more water than what could be supplied by the city or that could be supported, they would need to look at alternate measures. And that's something that will be covered in the environmental review, and that analysis will be done.
And same with electric. My understanding is
Yep, so
if it is being built with the goal ultimately, and does TRAC actually sell the land then to a one who will actually build the buildings, or do they rent it?
I think it's typically a sale.
Okay.
But for the electric isn't covered under an environmental review. Like an electric generating facility is all held through the state Public Utilities Commission process. So that's not something that we would address through this environmental review. We'd be looking at more of like land use, water, sanitary sewer, wetlands, endangered species, cultural resources. So those are all different categories that are covered, including traffic. So traffic analysis will be completed as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks.
Okay, so can I get a motion to approve the governmental agreement?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Diane, second by Chris. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, item B, Endress Cannon Falls LLC variance request. Zach? Or,
Yeah, so I can touch on this too. And we do have Mark Sonsgaard here as the representative for the developer on the application for the variance. We did meet after the Planning Commission. Before you tonight is the resolution from the Planning Commission. Our process is to, take that decision from the Planning Commission and bring it forward as a recommendation to the council. In conversations with the developer, we felt that they would pull the variance application. I do want to provide Mark some opportunity to answer any additional questions, because there were some things that were brought up in the Planning Commission that we didn't have the information for. I think he could provide a little more context to what's going on with that development and where the request came from, just to help the council better understand what's going on. There was additional narrative, I believe, that was presented as well there. So if there are any other questions about that, I did also share it in my update, some conversations that about this. Currently, the nature of the request, the variance, was to be able to put in gravel driveways, because the driveways serving those sites are going to be extremely long. And whether or not the policy side of this are gravel driveways something that just will not be permitted at all within the city limits, or are there circumstances or areas or future development that it makes sense? I guess in my trying to evaluate this and understand the situation, why our gravel or paved surfaces for driveway is important to the city. I do believe that certainly within the city proper, where there is managed storm sewer, that having a gravel surface could create issues with that getting into the storm sewer and causing problems. Where we definitely want to have them paved. Those driveways are not going to be longer than like 30 to 50 feet in most regard. Where in this instance, those driveways are 300 to potentially even 500 feet. So they are serving a much different capacity than what most driveways within the city are serving.
I don't really have a problem with gravel, but there was a guy who was speaking at the public input, and he said it's the drainage. It all just drains into his ditch
Yep.
because he's surrounded by the other three other areas, and they just keep draining into his field.
Yeah,
And
so-
so
Yeah, so Mark
that's something.
Mark did have additional information that he showed us. They do have that planned and mapped out where the water is going to shed and drain to in those areas. I don't know if that's something that. Yeah.
Would your plan also address the future? That because it's these four, and then it would connect with the other that you guys are planning on talking about building?
There are part of one development, but these four are kind of outliers to that. And then in between them is actually a dedicated parkland that would be
Okay.
contributed to the city.
Is the drainage going to go into the parkland?
And yeah,
Okay. Yeah, feel free.
yeah, Mark, if you could.
Zach, can I use this? Okay. Good evening, council. My name is Mark Sonstegard. I'm a consultant for the Enders Group, who is the developer on this property. He's not able to be here this evening. But, for those who aren't familiar, almost 2 years ago, we started working on this piece of property. A little over a year ago, we've received a preliminary plat approval for what you see up on the screen right now. About a year ago, we went with a final plat for what you see that's not shaded out. There's about seven villa lots and then 8 cul-de-sac lots, we're calling them. So that's what we did plat last year, and in 2024, that's the development that we did. Now, to go way back in history, this is the old Sandstone Ridge development. So our development work this year included basically taking up the remaining sandstone streets that had failed over the years. And then we rebuilt the street in front of those villa homes. And then also we rebuilt Decorah. And then we're calling, I can't even see it from there. Oh, I got it right here. Ridgewood Drive cul-de-sac. Yeah, so we did do that development work over the summer, and then late in the fall, the Enders Group hired Inspire out of the Northfield area to go ahead and build one villa home and then one Rambler home on the cul-de-sacs. Those homes were just finished up here late in the year, and then they are open now for showings, and they'll also be in the spring preview. So if you do have time, we'd appreciate you swinging by and taking a look at those homes. So that's basically a quick history. The estate lots down the lower right corner. And I will get to your answers, but I just wanted to follow up. So as you can see, the property that included, and this was all city property for the development, and then you can see there's an area that we call City Park, and that's actually a ravine/slope wooded area. Our plan is to do a wooded trail through there, which we started working on. Then we have these areas that are disconnected from the development, but it's still in city property. I had an exhibit in my narrative on that. And then when the County Road 24 was built, it even bisected it one more time. So we kind of struggled a little bit and worked with city staff on what's the best use for those areas, and the idea of estate lots that's what we proceeded with, and through the preliminary plat process, and then also through some ordinance updates. Those estate lots were preliminary plat approved, and we did, we had to do some changes with your requirements for septics and well, because again, water and sewer is a long ways away from this area. So we did all that, and then once the preliminary, so getting to where we are today, we started working with marketing these lots. They're preliminary platted, but they're not platted yet, but we're looking for buyers. And before we even got going with that, it was a long conversation with the county on where the driveways need to go. And we went back and forth with them for several months. Driveways need to be a certain distance away from the intersection. The county really wanted only one driveway to the north, one driveway to the south, and they wanted to make sure they were across from each other, and there's a number of different things. But eventually we worked that out and got the driveway permits, mainly because we wanted to start marketing it and to get people in to see them, so that's why we graded in those driveways. So now we're starting to market it, and then several interested buyers are like, whoa, these are pretty long driveways. We like the rural feel. They're looking around the other homes in the area that obviously are not part of the city, but they're right next door, and they're like, you know, because city requires pavement, and we basically were telling future buyers, yeah, these roads or these driveways need to be paved. That's why we're here. We had several possible buyers just questioning what's the need for the driveway to be paved, and I'm looking at it and like, yeah, driveways in the city, off city streets where you got storm sewers and a bunch of people living close together, and it's nice and neat, and for stormwater management purposes and just keeping an orderly neighborhood, it's a good idea to pave your driveways. We're out here in the more the rural area, you actually have to leave the city and go around, and then you get to these lots. So, so it seemed like a reasonable request to run it through a variance application to see if these couple lots could have a gravel driveway or a variance not to have paved driveways. Now, looking through your variance requirements, you know, obviously the biggest issue is it's costly, and to tell a buyer, well, you need to pave it just because that's what the rule says. And that's kind of where we are today, because you can pave it. There's no reason why you can't. It's just, you know, the question we have is, you know, why? Why? Because you're in a rural area, you're not having storm water management. You know, I basically drove from City of Jordan to Cannon Falls on my way here, and most driveways I saw along the way were gravel. And actually I grew up out in the country, just outside town, and my driveway was gravel, and seems to work. So I guess what Mr. Achenbacher mentioned is, yeah, we don't meet the requirement for a variance because I can't really show a hardship. But I guess what we can discuss or talk about, or I'm interested in knowing your thoughts on, is there something that could be done or create something in your ordinance that would allow for a driveway to be gravel under certain conditions? One of the items that we're just throwing around was, say the city needed to annex something in, but they had to jump over or include a bunch of rural acreage lots. Would you require those folks to pave their driveway right away? And maybe you wouldn't require them to pave it right away until they went and got a permit. And then per your ordinance, well, you got a deck permit, but you need to bring your lot up to code, so you need to pave your driveway to get your deck permit. And I may be making stuff up a little bit, but I've kind of seen how things like that work, especially with septics. So I guess my request for you tonight, or what I'd like to hear a little discussion or your thoughts on, is, you know, is it reasonable for the city of Cannon Falls, which is a rural town, to somehow allow gravel driveways in certain situations? Because maybe someday you will be annexing in some larger lots, and are paved driveways really needed? And then I guess in this situation, you know, I'd be happy to hear why you thought paved driveways would be needed. Now, I already forgot to answer your question, but I will get back to that. So this is north. North is up. Rohr, I believe, spoke at the planning commission. His lot, or his property is this long skinny one. And he mentioned that he's almost surrounded by city, so on the west side, he's all city, south, and then we loop around like that. So what these blue lines represent is actually swales or water drainage. So right now, water does just flow around the cul-de-sac through this ravine, comes out here and down there. There's also a lot of water that comes off the field and then into his area here. So that's the existing drainage situation. Again, our estate lots is over here where there's a rather large flow of water that comes through here, goes underneath the county road through a rather large cul-de-sac. We put a culvert underneath the driveway that flows here, and all this water connects and flows through a rather large ravine through this part of the property. So that's kind of the general drainage. On this plan right here, we show again, this is the Rohr property. As we put in the driveway, whether it be gravel or pavement, all this water flows, it's crowned, so the water flows left to right, left to right, left to right, till it gets to this point right here. And then it flows left to right, and then this part of the cul-de-sac is tipped up a little bit in the middle, so this little bit of the cul-de-sac does flow this way, out that way, and that way. So basically, the water for the cul-de-sac kind of flows through here, this way, and maybe a little bit's going to flow down this swale and out to that property. So it's a long way of saying the driveway really doesn't make a difference in the Rohr's property. We have met with him several times, and as we develop our next phase, again, here's the Rohr property, all this water that's been flowing off the field and down this ravine right here is going to get captured by this pond and then gets rerouted right into this ravine here. So eventually it will improve his situation.
Thank you.
But that was actually happened prior to you starting this development, correct? I mean, this has been.
Yeah. We didn't change any of the drainage going into Rohr's property. And then we got an open dialogue with them too. I wish you would have kind of called me before.
Sandstone, the one that did it.
Sandstone
before?
Ridge.
Yeah, they set that up.
Pretty much. I mean, again, we did draw this map that showed, these are kind of swale lines that kind of pick up drainage areas. This water comes around, and then through this woods right here, if you walk in there, there's a little creek ravine, and it does flow out and then back in. But this little ravine that flows through here and here, you know, if you go back to historic documents, that ravine went right through here. You know, historically, that water's been flowing through there for a rather long time. So yeah, again, and then we're open to chat with him and stuff. But there's a couple little things we plan to help him out with as we get going and doing some more drainage stuff. And he's got a little ravine or stuff that needs to be, that's been washed away. We'll be moving fill in there for him later on once we get that further down. And we've worked with him on moving his stuff around. He had some stuff a little bit over on the property, and we sorted some stuff. All right, so back to gravel driveways. Again, I didn't mean to get too far off the track. But again, I guess, you know, if you read your ordinance, you know, variance, I don't have the hardship here. But I guess the question I do ask is, you know, is this something that you should relook at in your ordinance to allow for driveway in certain cases? Again, we are unique, and these lots are very unique considering they're almost completely separate from the city, except for it is continuous, but we're going down a ravine or down a hill, down a ravine, and then again, you can't even get to it off of a city road. So as you ponder this, is, I'd like to hear a good reason why they should be paved. And I'm guessing you would have one, Diane.
Okay, I'm assuming that all 4 homes are planning to have the cement apron off their garages?
Yes. Well,
I
yeah,
mean, I know cement or paved of some sort, correct?
I would almost anticipate, again, we're custom home building out here and it's rural lots. You go look around, everyone has a long driveway. They may pave 20 feet in front of their garage just so they have a nice place to park the car.
Correct. And so if they're doing that, I mean, we didn't let someone else, another person came with the same kind of request in paving the driveways, and we did not. They're again out in the country, hardly in town. But ultimately, the long-range plan says it will be surrounded by the city. And what we found in other instances, when we let things remain gravel when they're ultimately going to have to be paved, it's future landowners who get stuck with that bill. Most of the time, they don't even realize that's an obligation. And I don't think we have any ability to look at realtors and say, put that in bold print on the sales contract. I don't know if it's buried somewhere, even if there's a way to ensure that they have it. But having also grown up in the country on a gravel road and knowing people and still visiting people out there, quite frankly, with kind of expensive homes are going to be sitting there, even driving on that short of gravel road is going to be dusty. And if one of the 2 homes says, I really would want it paved, and the other one says, then you pay for it, it doesn't build goodwill and better friendships. But it's an ordinance. If we want to go back and revisit that and change the ordinance, that's fine. But at this point, unless we do that, being we've already denied one of these requests, I can't imagine where I would be comfortable granting this one.
I guess I'm just gonna kind of back Diane up. The same thing. I mean, you admitted there's no hardship here, or you can't prove a hardship. I can't imagine, when I wasn't up here when Hardwood Estates went through, but I could just imagine those people throwing their hands up and being super upset because that was a gravel road and then they had to pay for half of it. And unexpectedly, it's just, that doesn't make sense to me to say yes to you guys and no to them. And then Diane also touched on it. I mean, I think long-range city plan is, we're going to grow further in this area, and what happens when the next person comes through and looks for a gravel driveway? I mean, we're going to be telling them the same thing, I think. And if our plan is to grow the city and have more homes there, hold them to the same standard as everybody else in the city. So that's where I sit on it. So
What's the plan so right now they're allowed to have,
Well,
there isn't city sewer and water there yet, right?
Right.
They've already been granted a variance to allow them to have a well and septic on those property, on all those parcels. That was,
And then once we did have the infrastructure, would they then be required to hook up?
and that, and yeah, yeah.
We said,
I think-
once sewer and water becomes available, they have to hook up at that point. Once there's a city line out there, they don't have an option to wait until they sell.
So
But there again, I don't know how that ever gets conveyed in real estate contracts.
So in researching this too, I had a conversation with our city engineer about, what is the timeline for water and sewer there, and unless circumstances change and demand changes, that's likely outside of a, closer to the 20-year timeline than it is a 5 to 10-year time frame, just because of where our mains go and the nature of those county roads. I mean, we'd be coming in from a very long ways away to bring in water and sewer, so you'd only want to do that when the demand necessitated it. So when you have some density to provide that sewer, so you can recoup some of the, those costs for bringing that there.
I don't really have a problem with the gravel, and I know that is, the developers up there have had nothing but problems from, sandstone, and on 25 there's like clay, and you're not gonna be able to really do a lot there. Basements always flood, the fields don't take the water, so.
That's a whole nother conversation, but
Yeah,
I could,
it's
it
just-
would sit here for an hour and explain
But-
how we're working on that
Yeah,
stuff, but yeah.
it's just, I don't see a lot of future development out there in the 5 to 10-year plan. I don't see anyone wanting to jump in on it, and so if we've got somebody who wants to do it and they just need a gravel driveway, like, give them a gravel driveway. It's a pretty long driveway
just
versus
specific-
Hardware Estates. Those are really close together. This is a long driveway,
Yeah,
and it's on the outskirts. You have to go out of town to get there.
yeah, very specifically, just to be clear, like, we're not talking about the rest of the Timber Ridge development, we're only talking about these estate lots that are in that far
Right.
east corner.
But just to clarify, they're probably gonna pave a whole lot of it anyway, just because they don't wanna eat the dust. So.
Or park
we're-
on it.
Yeah, well, we're talking, do we
if I had a
really want to?
$1 million house, I wouldn't
I mean,
want a
either,
gravel driveway.
I mean, I would say if we want to revisit the whole thing, then look at the ordinance itself and change that. But being we wouldn't grant this variance to the other developer who wanted to, or person who wanted to not pave the driveway, and we said, no, you've got to. I find it very hard to not do the same here. It's,
Yeah, and I add some more clarity. Mark and I spoke before the meeting, and it is the intention that the variance requests, you would be willing to pull the application for that for
Yes.
even not to be considered tonight, so you wouldn't have to vote on it. They're pulling that as a variance. They're saying, we don't want to move forward with this. So that action item is, I think, moot. We're trying to gauge, I guess, for policy discussion for the council in the future. Is there circumstances in which it makes sense that gravel driveways are allowed in certain portions of the city?
Well, if part of the reason is because of, drainage and whatnot, why wouldn't it coincide with whether they're hooked up to city water and sewer? So if you're not hooked up to city water and sewer, like those goes hand in hand. If and when you are hooked up to city water and sewer, you also have to have a paved driveway. To me, that kind of makes sense.
That would be a lot in 1 year. Because they're gonna have to pay for their hookups. They're gonna have to pay for those lines coming through. And then to add that on top of it, that would be a lot in 1 year to add on to someone. So say no to that one.
I just have a hard time speculating the appetite here because I think part of the equation is what's our city plan, what's our comprehensive plan that hasn't been updated for 20-some years, I think that's part of the equation. I think right now we have a blueprint for how to do variances, and one of those things is proving a hardship. They don't have a hardship right now. Variances exist for hardships and unique, super unique scenarios. That's our blueprint right now. That's kind of where I'm sitting. I don't know.
What was the planning commission's vote?
I wasn't there, but it was
To deny.
It was unanimous.
Unanimous to
Deny.
deny.
Okay.
And they're pulling it, so we're not even discussing that. I think the only thing they're asking is there any room in the future where that does make sense that we do allow? Is there any exception that we would allow? I agree, I wouldn't want to be the guy who has to hook up to city sewer and water and pave a 500-foot driveway all in the same time.
That'd be fine.
But if they wanted to, all I'm saying is that I could see that making sense, that would be a scenario where I would think that would be acceptable, but again, that would be changing our ordinance, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
and I, there again, having been raised on a gravel road, it's not just, and I certainly agree with Lisa in terms of the cost, but gravel roads are nasty when you drive a car down. I mean, that dust coats everything in sight,
Right.
unless you treat it with fluoride or whatever.
And this is a gravel driveway, so you don't have people driving by you. It's just you coming in and out. But
But I've driven my road down gravel driveways, and by the time you're done, your car
Right.
is covered with gravel.
right. So I guess the question is that makes sense to make that a requirement for that extra comfort of being on a paved surface? That's kind of what the point I wanted to make.
Yeah, and your question, I think it's a good point to ask. John, who reviews this or looks at the ordinance and decides whether we're being too picky or not picky enough, or?
That would be policy of the council.
Yeah, that's the council, and there comes times where ordinances are drafted, developed, they can evolve, you know, and that's, I guess, the point of this discussion tonight was, is there appetite to even look at this, or is it just, no, let's stick with what we have? This is the direction that we, you know, this is the ordinance that was passed, it's working for us, it's gonna, you as a council feel it's gonna continue to work for you, you know, and we won't even worry about bringing it back. Or if there's, okay, I do see some possibility for discussing this and finding a way to have that conversation and develop that policy, we can work on bringing that back to the council at a, you know, for further discussion.
So, I mean, I would, again, we officially will pull it, but I would appreciate if you, I don't know if you have workshops or council workshops, if it would be a topic for that. We don't need to decide, obviously, tonight, but.
Yeah, and I think another process too here, since we do have planning commission, like to have them review an ordinance change like this in advance and provide those recommendations as well. So there, you know, that might just be another step in the process of which, you know, before that would be there. But as I said, if the council had no interest in seeing a gravel driveway anywhere in the city limits, then, you know, we can end that conversation. But if it's something that we could bring, if there is a possibility for it under certain circumstances, and they, you know, make sense for future growth and development, or they make sense in terms of, hey, doesn't have connected water and sewer right now, at the point in which it does, you know, that would be the time and make it conform with all the other city lots that are connected to water and sewer with paved driveways.
All right.
So.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Council business item C, resolution 2800, approving a conditional use permit for an outdoor sales lot at the Cannon Falls Mall.
And
I can just answer any questions you have, since I know you know about it, but.
I was, when it was brought to planning commission, I hadn't actually gone out to the mall and looked, and my bad on that. It appears that the storage units are all sitting out there, and a whole nother set of them is sitting between the bank and Triangle Auto, and all of them are on grass. And so because obviously the zoning planning commission recommended that it be that they be placed on a paved lot. And you look at the properties where they're now sitting and neither one of them is paved, and I'm not really sure that paving them is really a good option. But I guess, and I asked John too, I mean, if they're actually putting them there to sell, shouldn't the actual company selling them have a business license to do that? Or I'm just very confused about it.
Yeah, so I'll address, I did look into the business license question after that. So our ordinances do prescribe for business licenses for specific things. So alcohol, I believe tobacco, massage, refuse haulers, but outdoor sales like this were not a part of that. Peddlers, solicitors, and licenses were. Those were the ones that we have prescribed license fees and applications for those things. So the rest of it, you know, if it is a sales thing, they should be licensed, or at least apply for that at the state level. I mean, if that applies, if it's a business, so get those filings in order at the state. But it's not something that in this instance, I believe the city would be licensing.
Did the other set ask for a permit? The ones that are between the bank and Triangle Auto? I think they're all the same owner, are they not? Different?
I believe it's a different owner, yeah. And I'm not sure. That was probably already, I mean, at least when I've worked here, I don't think they might have been existing, but.
I mean, they're kind of cute looking, and they're really not ugly or, offensive in any way. It's just, if we make the one do something, there again, is it fair to make one do something that the other one doesn't have to? I wish they hadn't applied at all. And I'd never seen them. But that was the only reason I brought it down, was just questions.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions about it? Can I get a motion to approve?
Second.
A motion by Lisa and a second by Chris to approve the conditional use permit. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay. Moving to reports. Maggie is not here. Did anybody? No, I am. Okay. EDA?
I don't have much of a voice, so I'll see how far
All
I
right.
get. EDA, we closed on a couple more lots last week. And then we'll be working on our strategic goals for 25 and the next 5-year outlook at our February meeting. And we're also, we'll be moving forward with our next phase meeting with WHKS in March. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. The Public Works and Park Board, I can answer that because you were there, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Most of what it was actually a pretty brief meeting. Most of what we talked about was on the consent agenda. Did you have anything else, Jed? I mean, I'll go around to you anyway, but. Okay, Finance Committee, we did not meet. This says March 10th. Is it really not meeting until March 10th?
Go up under reports.
Oh, ha, good gravy. Library Board.
I was there, and
I was not. I was absent. Sorry.
but you were out of town.
Yeah. Sorry.
And just being there were 3 meetings scheduled on that Monday. Library Board has chosen to move their meetings to the 4th Monday. So that will not be a conflict anymore. So we thank them for that.
Okay, and the Planning Commission.
Both of those items were on the agenda.
Okay, Chief McCormick.
Just want to remind, just want to remind people that while these really cold temperatures are going on, we aren't getting any snow, but it is going to warm up a little bit, and they're predicting some snow. So please get your vehicles off when it does snow. Public Works needs them out of the way so they can come in and plow curb to curb without having to slow down and go around other vehicles that are parked. We try to avoid having to tow them, but we will. And so their help in ensuring the streets are free of the vehicles so that snow removal can be done is really needed. That's all I got.
Thank you. Sarah. John.
Thank you. Just to touch on Finance Committee, it's not, the next one is scheduled for March because I know there's a conflict on its normal scheduled date where I'm out of town.
Okay.
So if we do need a special meeting, we can call for that at a later time and post
Okay.
for it accordingly. Then I just want to inform you that still there's the elected officials training. We did get Chad registered for that. If you're interested, the cohort in Plymouth is February 21st and 22nd. I do believe I have 2 attending with me to the Southeastern Minnesota League of Municipalities next Thursday down in Casson. The council retreat, I talked about that at the last meeting, like based on the schedule, the mayor I know has a conflict at the end of January. So that's going to be pushed out until later in February. We'll find a date, but look for more information to come in my updates like I shared this last week. And if you can share some of that feedback, it'll help kind of expedite that process. And then next week I'm going to an EMS workshop in St. Paul, that annual meeting as I mentioned, and then there's an MCMA, so that's Minnesota City County Managers workshop. That's in St. Paul on Friday. And then just because I know it was shared with council today, there was a message that went out, and we've had residents talking to us about the swans that are in the park. Just making sure that people are aware they are federally permitted. When we acquired the swans, we did get the proper permits to have them. The DNR was on site last year. I know Judd's given me a great deal of information on this, and he's by far knows more. But I wanted to share that I'm really appreciative of all the work that they have been doing to care for those animals. The DNR was out on site last year and inspected the area. They found it acceptable for their standards, that we were in compliance with all of that. We had another individual with an agency that asked us to do a little bit more, so that's why we've installed a shelter with straw bedding there, and then added or changed a different food that's more waterfall specific. So that has been now taken care of for those. And as bitter cold as it had been, the water there was completely ice free. It was full of waterfowl today. I think it is in terms of Minnesota and conditions like this, it's probably one of the best places that they could probably reside. So that's the update on that.
Okay. Thank you. Laura, anything other than EDA? Zach? Jed?
Next week, we are planning to burn the brush piles. We would prefer there be some snow on the ground, but it's not looking, we're hoping for a little bit of snow, but we will work with the fire department to make sure that we have a controlled burn. We'll probably start it next Monday. So just give everybody a heads up that there's gonna be a little smoke in the air.
Diane? Lisa?
Nope.
Chad?
No, glad to hear the swans are okay.
Yep. Ryan?
Nope.
Chris?
Just one thing I'm just going to touch on it because I think Maggie would if she was here, but I did see that she's putting some stuff out there for, is she advertising it as Cabin Fever Days on Facebook? But it is alumni tournament and stuff like that, so there is some stuff going on around town this weekend, Saturday, maybe even Friday night too. So just so people are aware of that. That's it.
Okay, and I don't have anything, so with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Diane, second by Ryan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.